Hello. Hi, how are you guys? Good? Great. Quick question. How many of you were once 18 years old? Probably most of you. How many of you were cool? Yeah, okay, me neither. How many of you been skydiving? Did you survive?
Nope.
Okay, cool, me too. So when I was 18, I was accepted to art school in Oakville. It was a bad decision, honestly. I kind of regret it, but it gave me a chance to get out of my horrible little town in Northern Ontario and gave me an opportunity to try something new, which was to try to be cool and to make friends. And I wasn't good at that in high school, so I thought I'd give it a chance. So I spent about the first, let's say, 6 months failing at that miserably at Sheridan College out in Oakville. And I finally got a little crew of people. They were kind of ragtag misfits like me, but we got along. And so one of them one day hit me up with this perfect opportunity to prove that I was a pretty cool person. And she was this young, sort of sporty Inuk girl. She's now actually a very talented documentarian, but she was very sporty, and she and her boyfriend approached me and my girlfriend at the time, who's now my wife actually. So, and they said, "Hey, do you guys want to go skydiving?" And I was like, "Great, yes, no, but yeah, okay, sure, why not?" So I did. So I decided I would do it, and I convinced my girlfriend, and she said, "Great, because I get a bunch of money off if I bring people with me, and I'm going for my certification. So you're basically like a coupon to me." And I was like, "Okay, you think I'm cool after though? So yeah, let's do this." And I'm an indoor kid. I mean, I spend most of my time painting and thinking, not really jumping out of stuff. And so. But I thought, if she would think I was cool, it would be worth it. So we took a drive out to the lovely little hamlet of New Lowell, Ontario. It's very, very close to Barrie, so you can picture the landscape, pretty grim. And so the first thing we had to do was pay and sign a waiver. And so we signed this waiver, and I read it. I've always been a bit litigious, and it basically said, "Hey, you have no reasonable expectation of death, for sure, but if you do die, that's on you." And so, I'm 18, I'm trying to think I'm cool, so I was like, I won't die, it's impossible. And I paid the $275 that my mother had just given me for groceries. Again, buying some cred, I guess. And I enrolled in what they call jump school. And so jump school is this interesting part of skydiving where you get really hyped up to go, you're super excited, you get there, adrenaline pumping, and then they put you in a trailer for 4 hours and make you practice all of the worst possible case scenarios in case something goes wrong. And so there's some interesting little tidbits I learned, like for example, if you're parachuting into trees by accident, you're supposed to do this. Because the most common cause of death when you do that is piercing the arteries in your armpits with the tops of the trees and bleeding out, speared to death on top of an evergreen. So another one was a cute little thing. They call a badly deployed parachute a bag of laundry. You've all seen cartoons where Wile E. Coyote or what have you will open and someone's laundry in there. Whoops. And also they tell you that your spare chute, there's a process. And they really do drill in this process to you quite hard. I still remember it, and it comes into this a little bit later. But your spare chute needs to be deployed using 2 hands. That's the thing. You need to loop a thumb behind it, pull straight up from the chest. And they also said that if you have to deploy your spare chute, there's a really good chance you're going home in an ambulance, if at all. So after being scared shitless for 4 hours, I finally got my chance to go select my parachute. Now, you probably heard the myth that they make you pack your own parachute when you go skydiving. Totally not true, which makes perfect sense actually if you think about it, because why would they trust you to do that? But they do make you pick your own chute. That's the thing. They make you pick your own chute. And so I went and I picked this chute, looked really cool. And I grabbed it and I put it on, strapping in. And so the chutes have like a belt here, and 2 leg straps. And I'd just gotten it belted on. And the wife of the owner of the establishment came in and said, no, I want that chute. And I was like, that can't be prophetic at all, right? Choosing my own chute and then someone else taking it. So I gave it to her, probably unwise. And I grabbed a different one off the shelf, and away we went. So the way it worked, we were doing what's called a static line jump, which is basically entry-level parachuting. It's not really skydiving. You're attached to the plane by a 100-foot cord, and you basically step outside of a plane, let go, and you fall 2 to 3 seconds, so no more than 100 feet, and then your parachute deploys, and it's a nice 4-minute leisurely drift to the ground. With a one-way radio on your chest where you're guided to steer and flare and do all the little things that they taught you to do in jump school. So we got up in the plane. We were about a mile in the sky, which is pretty high when you're in something the size of a minivan. And I was, I've always been a nervous flyer, and so I was trying to take it in, like, this is so pretty. I love it. This is great. And then they opened the door, and again, if you've never been in that situation, someone opening the door of a small aircraft is like not ideal. It's a little nerve-wracking. So they open the door, and the way it's slated is you have an instructor and 4 students, and the 4 students go in the order of weight, which is a little weird, but that's how they do it. They try to lighten the load, and then. And so they jump out, and then because it was the end of the season, the skydiving instructor decided she wanted to do another jump from 10,000 feet. So she got us up there, and she's like, all right, so here's how it's going to go. We're going to go in order of weight. First one, you get to the door, you get in position, I'm going to spank you. And I was like, sounds legit, sounds great. And she's like, now here's the thing, if any of you get too scared to go, I don't get to jump. I have to go down back to the ground, and it's like end of the season. I really want this jump, so you're all going. So no freaking out. And I was like, okay, that's fine, that's cool. And she's like, you're the heaviest, you're going first. And I was like, that's not fine, but I'll figure it out. And so we got up there, like I say, a mile in the sky, about 4,000 feet, and they opened the door, and so what you have to do is you get out onto the side of the plane, which, again, if you haven't done it, is something that everything in your mind is telling you not to do. It's like if there's one kind of vehicle in motion you do not want to exit, it's an airplane. And so you sort of step out onto a little strut, and you wedge your foot in the door panel, and then you grab another strut, and you sort of, the hardest thing you ever do, you hoist yourself out to the side of the plane, and you're sort of riding it, walk like an Egyptian style. And so I did that, and I was like, that was great, man, what a thrill, I'm done, it's over. And then the spank comes. And I'm 18, being spanked by a small leathery woman a mile in the sky is pretty new to me. And so I kind of froze for a second. Kind of froze and thought, I know what that spank means, I think. And I don't know about this. And so while I was thinking, she thought I was choking up. I wasn't. I was just considering things. And so she just lets go on me really hard because she thought maybe I was scared and she really wanted her jump. So in reaction to that, what I do is I let go. And I don't know how many of you have fallen out of anything or towards things. Usually when you're falling, you're looking down. You're looking at what's about to hit you. This is really different, the opposite, in fact. You are looking up, and you're looking at the only safe thing within a mile of you, rapidly getting tiny. And it's a real thrill, I gotta say. I will say that for that 2 to 3 seconds, it was an incredible thrill. And then my parachute deployed. Kind of. So what happened is, I guess in that moment, I forgot to flare properly, which is kind of an airfoil, and it helps you stabilize. And my parachute came out, so good on that. But what it ended up doing was wrapping all of the cords on the left side around my left arm. So I was sort of in this position, if you can imagine. And it was uncomfortable. It was not great. And so luckily I'd just been indoctrinated 4 hours in jump school, and I thought, okay, this isn't great, but I know what to do. I gotta turn on my one-way radio so I can hear the guy and he can tell me what to do next. And I did that, did my radio check, and put it on the right channel, and I heard a voice check in. It's like, okay, great, I'm okay. And the owner, who was the spotter for it, said, jumper number 1. They don't learn your name, that would be too personal, in case you die, I guess. So he said, jumper number 1, it looks like you got a bag of laundry there. Way less funny when you're hanging off of it. He said, so prepare on my mark to deploy your emergency chute. And I said, okay, to myself, because they can't hear you on the one-way radio. And I said, okay, here we go. This is going to be rough, but good thing I trained for this. And so I thought back and, okay, link your left thumb behind the pull and then pull out with your right hand. And so I sort of, okay, and I kind of almost reached it. And I thought, you know what, it can't be that hard. I'll just do it with my right hand. I can't reach it. So I kind of had to wedge it in like this to get the right leverage. And he said, on my mark, okay, ready? Pull. And I went. And nothing happened. And so I was sort of a little confused at that point, because I swear to God they told me it would totally deploy my chute, spare chute, the whole thing. What happened exactly was nothing. And I guess the reason is because I had no leverage to pull that chute correctly. So there I was, hanging in the sky, or rather falling rapidly. And I thought, well, you're not the kind of person to panic. You're a pretty well put together guy mentally. So let's run through what we can do here. And so the air tension on these cords makes them like steel bands. There's nothing you can really do. There's just you can't do anything. So here I am tied up like this, and I thought, well, maybe if I undo my parachute, I could maybe like wiggle out of the shoulder strap, and that'll. So I undo the top one, I undo the middle one. So at this point, I'm hanging sort of in a couple of groin straps, and I was like, okay, I'll keep it on this shoulder, so I'll be fine. And maybe I can just pull my shoulder, and because of the air tension, there's nothing I can do. The air pressure is insane. So I managed to get those straps done up. At this point, the one-way radio guy has gone from orderly, please pull your chute, to jumper number 1, are you awake? What's going on? Are you passed out? Are you having a seizure? And I was like, I'm fine. I'm figuring it out, guy. And so my next solution was to I figured, well, I've got my right hand and I've got my arm up like this. What if I break my wrist? And then, so maybe I'll wedge my fingers in here, maybe I'll try to snap my wrist, and maybe that'll sort of let the tension loose. Again, indoor kid, so turns out I can't break my own arm. Which I have never lived down. I've never lived that down. One day. So while I was sitting there, and gradually, I mean, I don't want to put it out there like I was chill as fuck or anything while I was kind of getting a little, And so at this point, the radio operator's screaming at me, just like, wake up, pull your chute. And so I shouted back at one point out of frustration. I was like, look, I'm trying, guy. So I turned it off, because I just didn't want to hear that anymore. I figured if this is going to go poorly, the last thing I want is some 48-year-old Chinese man screaming at me as I, plummet to earth. And so once I'd figured out that I couldn't break my own arm, and I couldn't pull myself out of my parachute physically, I gave up. Which is kind of weird. When you're 18, you don't expect to sort of like have a little bit to consider your imminent death. And so I did. I gave up. I just kind of went limp, and I sat there, and I was like, well, I can see people on the ground now. I can see buildings, and I can see the car we drove up in. So I guess this is it. And I kind of chilled out, actually, and I took in, it's around Barrie, so it's not great sights, but being that high up, at least you get a little perspective, and it was pretty. And I thought, well, it's not so bad. My mom's gonna be pissed that I spent that grocery money on dying. And so I just kind of sat there, and I won't lie, I mean, this is, 15 years ago, 16 years ago, and I may have prayed. I don't know how to do that, but I think I was sort of like, hey, anyone, if you're around and you like get me out of this, that would be great. And I guess at this point I should tell you what was actually going on from an outside point of view. A friend of mine had been filming this whole time, and he told me later that he stopped because it became very apparent that I was about to die, and he thought it would be tasteless to record my final moments. So, in my mind, I am suspended in midair. Yeah, there's rushing wind and everything, but it's all fine. Turns out I was doing rapid 360-degree spirals, sort of trailing this empty laundry sack. And so what happened next, I didn't understand, but all of a sudden I was free. And what had happened is I'd hit a different air pressure pocket, and I caught a crosswind, and it actually flipped me all the way upside down, released the tension on those cables, and my chute inflated instantly. And all of a sudden there I was, and it was fully inflated. I kind of took a moment to register that, and I turned back on my radio. And let me tell you, at that point, this guy, I'd had a little bit of time without him. This guy was losing it. And he went, oh, jump number one, pull your flares. And then they guide you in. So he guided me in, and, I jumped right back to jump school, and I pulled them out, and I flared one way, and I did about 165-degree turn, came in for a landing. I landed really smooth, by the way. Really, really good. They told me later it was one of the best amateur landings they'd ever seen. Unfortunately, one thing you're supposed to do is gather up your parachute right afterwards so you don't get blown away. But I landed in a group of crying, screaming people, and so I figured I could skip that step. So I landed and I was like, oh, can you get my chute for me? And they were like, oh, you're gonna die. I was like, yeah, cool. That was, whoo. So the whole trip was supposed to take, it's a 3-second free fall followed by 4 minutes and 50 seconds of drifting lazily to the ground, taking in the Greater Barrier Area. And they timed it. All that happened in 1 minute and 11 seconds. I was told later, I was very lucky, in fact, that I had my chute had opened when it had, because at 900 feet above the ground, which is really not that high when you're falling quite quickly, there's a pressure switch that automatically deploys your emergency chute, which would have effectively torn my left arm off if I'd still been tangled up. And so I guess, I don't know, in closing I'd say that I've told this story a few times, and I'm often asked, would you do it again? And I'm like, are you fucking insane? No. So think twice before you carpe diem, guys. Thanks.